Hey everyone, welcome to the latest edition of the DDT Archives. I am Greg. With me as always is my partner in crime, Chris. What's up, bro?
What's going on, my man?
Oh, you know, quarantine life is the best life.
It is the best life.
Whatever. What are you going to do? I got a week left on lockdown, so it's nice to have time to prepare for shows like this and, you know, talk to everybody and catch up, play some video games, watch some old wrestling, and overall enjoy myself. How have you been dealing with this whole thing?
Is that a loaded question?
Kind of.
I'm doing great with it. You know, I gave myself a mohawk today.
I wasn't going to bring that up, but that's fine.
You know, I decided to just throw caution to the wind and surprise my wife, who proceeded to take a video and sent it to everyone that we know to tell me to shave my head because I have a bald spot. And I told her I just don't care. This is quarantine life, and I'm gonna live my best life. So
that's your version of your best life.
Right now,
a Wednesday afternoon mohawk. That's your best life.
Right now, yes, it is.
Totally fair. All right. So we're here. We're talking about the best in classic pro wrestling, looking back at some of the great events, matches, and just overall superstars. Today we got a little special episode. We're going to cover Starrcade 85. So if you want to go back and look at the WWE Network, and it's the third Starrcade, and it's 1985, takes place November 28th, 1985. But before we get into that, as per the last show, we were kind of up in the air of where you could find us, and I wanted to make this announcement to kick it off. So we're finally have covered all of our bases when it comes to availability. So we're on iTunes right now, we're on Spotify right now, we're on YouTube right now. So all of those huge platforms, we are available. So make sure you go there. If you like the show, subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at DDT Archives. You can follow Chris on Twitter at Chris_DDTHSLB. See, I remembered it this time.
That's good, because I still don't.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. That's my job. So
I still only have 3 followers, though, so nobody is doing what we have.
Please go follow Chris so he stops complaining about it. So today... So going back to that, we're everywhere now, so it's easy to find us. So make sure you subscribe, you rate, you check us out, you throw us a follow on Twitter, reach out to us. We're always here. Lord knows we're not doing anything else, so we have plenty of time to communicate, make some new friends, and some new fans. So ready to talk about Starrcade 85?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's go.
All right. So like I said, it took place on Thanksgiving night, 1985. That's November 28th. It took place in 2 different arenas, which I thought was interesting because this was one of the first times that was done in this early age of, it wasn't even pay-per-view yet. It was closed circuit TV. So it took place at the Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina, and the famous Omni in Atlanta. Both just legendary arenas for Jim Crockett Promotions and WCW, right or wrong.
Absolutely. Those were probably the 2 most famous arenas that they attended.
Yeah. So, you know, Greensboro was the home for the first 4 Starrcades, but remember, this is one of the first big events for Jim Crockett after the first WrestleMania. So they wanted to kick it up a notch, so they had it in 2 different arenas. Now, it's kind of funny because when you think about it, think about escalation when it comes to wrestling, right? It's like, all right, WWF has to compete with Jim Crockett and the early Starrcades, 83, 84. What do? They put on WrestleMania. WrestleMania comes along, Starrcade 85. Screw it, we're going to go in 2 different arenas, make it this big super show. Then what happens after that? WrestleMania a few months later, WrestleMania 2. How many arenas were they in, buddy?
3.
Exactly. So escalation in wrestling has existed for such a long time. So it's funny how the timeline. Go ahead.
And the 3 cities were a little bit bigger in the WWE. I think it was Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they went for big-time cities, too. So they knew they were going to get the viewing audience. But give Crockett credit for kind of bringing this idea out and getting so many people to watch closed-circuit TV.
Oh, for sure. And I thought another little interesting footnote, speaking of closed-circuit TV, I looked it up because I know we don't do Meltzer star ratings on here. We're just not about that life.
No.
But I looked it up because I like to see what he was talking about, and he didn't even see this event because he couldn't get a feed for it. So he didn't. There's no star ratings or any write up about Starrcade '85 because he didn't even watch it. His minions sent him the information about the show, but he didn't actually see it. So I just thought that was a kind of funny little fact. So like I said, Greensboro held the first four Starrcades, 83 through 86. You know, the Omni was the home for Starrcade in 86, 89, and the first War Games, which took place at Great American Bash 87. So the Omni in Atlanta, we all know that's where WCW's headquarters were moving forward. So the Omni in Atlanta was such a huge arena. It's great. So before we get going match for match, what were some of your thoughts going into this? Because for me, this was the first time I'd ever seen this show. This is a file this under shits Greg's never seen, which is a lot of this older stuff. So what were your thoughts coming into this one?
The only match on the card that I knew about in detail going in was the Magnum Tully match, the I Quit match. It's probably their most famous match for both wrestlers. And I kind of felt like when we do these old school cards, sometimes they don't stand the test of time, and we wind up just basically poo-pooing all over pay-per-views. And I knew at least one match was going to be like, this made it legit, and that's why I suggested it.
Yeah, so I didn't know. The only match I really knew about coming in was Dusty versus Flair in the main event for the title and the whole, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail later on, but I knew this was that show. Obviously it was the poster and the title card on the network and everything like that, but even before that I knew it was Dusty versus Flair for the 10 pounds of gold. But for me, just after watching it, the show as a whole was for this time period, and you think of 1985, you think of the cartoon rock and wrestling era, right or wrong?
You do, except this is the stuff I was watching.
Yeah.
So it was a little different for me. I'm sure for you going in, this was a bloodbath. For me, this is just what the Southern wrestling was. In any big show, there was blood and a lot of it.
See, it's interesting you say that, because for me, I'm thinking of it's 1985. This is probably definitely before I even watched wrestling or knew what it was. I mean, it's 4 years old. But thinking about the time period and what was going on up in New York, I felt like this was way ahead of its time. Maybe not. I could totally be wrong, but it felt a little ahead of its time with the level of violence that went on. But you're telling me that this was the norm.
Maybe not in as many matches, but in the big time matches, there always was a ton of blood. If you look up pictures of Flair in the early 80s, he's having a crimson mask in just about all of them.
No. See, that's the thing. For me, the way this card is laid out, if I had to modernize it, it really was almost an Extreme Rules pay-per-view type of card, just the way it's put together. Like a lot of gimmicks, a lot of different types of matches. There's rarely a straight up wrestling match on the show. So it's just, for me, it's just there's a lot going on, and it's extremely violent, and it's not for the faint of heart. And if you don't, I'll just give this warning. If you go watch it, and I suggest that you do, because it's a fun show, see a lot of these older guys. It's a bloody mess. It's like 85% of the matches have blood in them. You can count on one. It's like an 11, 12 match show. I think one of them didn't have blood in it, if that's even fair. So it's just, for me, if you like that kind of thing, it's awesome to see just this old bloody messes. But if that's not your cup of tea, it's like this can be a little bit difficult to watch.
This was ECW before ECW existed.
Ooh, yeah. So let's get started. So our first match of the of the show is Crusher Khrushchev versus Sam Houston. And this is for a championship, if correctly. Hang on a second.
NWA Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, which is it's a vacant title right now. And, I mean, just Crusher Khrushchev would become Smash from Demolition, right?
Yep.
That's Barry Darsow?
Oh, man. And, yeah, it's Barry Darsow. Yeah. At the time, he turned his back on America and became a Soviet citizen.
It's great, too, because there's an interview with him later in the show where it's like he's got this southern drawl and he's got the sickle of the USSR in his sights, and it's hilarious. I love that. But you could tell, and then it's against Sam. So it's Crusher Khrushchev against Sam Houston. This is the first match in Greensboro. Sam Houston is the half brother of Jake the Snake Roberts, which I thought was a nice little fun fact, and who had some mild success here and there. But for me, it was a little bit of an awkward match. I felt like Crusher was a little bit smoother than his opponent. So what did you think about this one?
I enjoyed the match, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. I didn't necessarily anticipate it being as smooth as I thought it was. I think of Barry Darsow, I think of Smash, just hard-hitting, he was actually performing during this card, and I really enjoyed it. And Sam Houston, I think, is an underrated talent. He's, that title was a little more than a mid-level title. At that point, everything was about a belt. And because of that, you had to have that mid-level guy. And Sam Houston could put on a good enough match that he could get people over. And I thought he did a really good job in this one.
Yeah, it was a cool finish, too. Kind of babyface gets screwed. Houston thought he won and was celebrating the victory, but Crusher had his foot on the ropes. And then he hits him then Houston gets hit with the big clothesline, and he appeared to get his own foot on the ropes, but the ref didn't see it and counted him for the three. Announcers didn't notice either because they didn't comment on it over the replay, even though it was glaring.
My friend, you're making a mistake. It was not a clothesline. It was the Russian sickle.
I do have the sickle in parentheses on my on my notes. I apologize for that. Excuse me.
I mean, it's the Russians, dude. Like, they were the second greatest national bad guys ever behind the Iron Sheik.
Oh, totally. And we'll see more of them later on in the night. Before we move forward, our announcers for the show is a very young Tony Schiavone and Bob Cottle, who do a very good job on the talking over these matches and announcing. I don't know. I think they were in Atlanta, though, for the show, right?
They were.
Okay. So it's interesting how they go back and forth between these arenas.
My favorite is when Tony leads Bob Cottle to somewhere, and Bob Cottle is nowhere there and just sits in silence for like 10 or 15 seconds, and then Tony says something different. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah, it does get a little bit awkward during this match, and Tony does his best over-the-top radio guy voice in this. It's not the Tony Schiavone we know and love in 2020. He sounds like he's giving away t-shirts out of the prize van near the Kmart. Like, he's just over-the-top radio guy. It's awesome. And the other thing I wanted to point out, just with going back to the opening match, is how great is the referee's outfit in this?
It's awesome.
Oh my God. It's 1985. He's wearing like a yellow jumpsuit, bell-bottom singlet. He looks like Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon. Oh my God. It's the greatest ref outfit I've ever seen.
It is really good.
All right. So any other final thoughts on a Crusher Khrushchev versus Sam Houston?
I thought it was a good match to get started on the card, and that's about it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I liked it.
It was the one without blood.
It was. They really peaked early. The next match, not so much. Oh, no. The next match is the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez versus Abdul the Butcher, and this is a Mexican death match. But it's really just a sombrero on a pole match.
Vince Russo before Vince Russo knew what wrestling was.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know that was part of a Mexican death match. It was, that was new for me. But absolute bloodbath from the first minute. It's on. The faces are gushing. So I really thought the entrances stood out to me in this match because it's just this generic music and no talking. So they had to have heavily edited it out from the network because back then they probably used real music, real pop music, right?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah, so it's just funny with the master editing of WWE Network to kind of get these things past copyright infringement. It's just funny. But so what are your thoughts about this match, man?
I'm sorry, you knew what was going to happen before it started. Abdullah the Butcher was not climbing a pole. There was no way. It just wasn't going to happen. I mean, listen, you know what I would really love to do? Let's get our Twitter flowing by starting a feud with Manny Fernandez because he hates when you criticize him if you're not a worker. So I'm going to tell you flat out, Manny Fernandez might be the worst of the worst at this time. He thinks he's good. He pretends to be a member of the Miami Dolphins. But it's not the same Manny Fernandez. He's just a guy from Texas that's okay in the ring. And, I mean, he does get a nice crimson mask and takes Abdullah's fork to the head. He bled with Abdullah before Abdullah had hepatitis, I guess, allegedly. But I didn't like it because it was predictable. You just went, the bowling ball's not going to climb up the pole.
Yeah, and that's how you win the match. You got to get the sombrero off the pole, and Manny Fernandez did that. Yeah, I'm with you, man. This match is it's just a disaster. Just blood everywhere. No real story or psychology in this match. It's just an absolute mess. So I'm with you there. Any other final thoughts on that? I'm not going to war with Manny Fernandez. That's just not going to happen. I don't know. Too tired for that.
I enjoyed number one Paul Jones. He's a guy I don't think we've ever really spoken about. And he just did such a good job in the 80s being a manager. Believable bad guy. You knew there was nothing redeemable about the man. Very underrated manager.
Yeah, and we'll get into him. He pops up later on in the match and later on in the show. So we'll come back to him. He's a very underrated manager. I always like Paul Jones as I get to watch all these old shows and learn about these new older guys. Well, new to me, but older guys. So in between the next two matches, we have our interview with Crusher Khrushchev that I alluded to earlier, and it's just so great to see. The interviewer is Johnny Weaver, and he's in North Carolina. And if there's ever the most obvious of reading cue cards during an interview, it's that, because he actually has to stop and collect himself to find his space on the cards, and it is just it's hard to watch. So is his forehead because it's all torn up, but it's hard to watch.
Yeah,
did you catch that?
I did. He was good back in the day. Just how the mighty have fallen by this time.
Yeah, so moving on. So the third match of the night is it's kind of a 2-for-1 special. So it's a Texas bull rope match between Cowboy Ron Bass and Black Bart. These guys were former tag team partners and obviously had a big feud. They used to be they were managed by J.J. Dillon. J.J. has moved on to just manage Black Bart. And if the stipulation was if Bass won, he would get 5 minutes with J.J. Dillon in the ring and get to enact his revenge over his former manager. And I don't know, I like the story this match told, and I thought it was fun afterwards when, obviously you wouldn't have that stipulation if Ron Bass wasn't going to win, and he did. and he gets he gets a few minutes with JJ Dillon, and it's a lot of fun to see JJ get beat up. And but I didn't find this that bad. I love JJ's tuxedo T-shirt, but this is another bloody mess of a match, and I just want to hear your thoughts.
So, this is gonna sound silly, but before watching this match, I always thought Ron Bass and Black Bart were the same guy.
That's
apparently they are not. So Ron Bass is a baby face, just nah, it's not okay. It was a good match though, and the story was there. Looking at JJ Dillon in his tuxedo T-shirt, jeans, and cowboy boots, and then thinking about where he'll be in about 6 months in his
like
$1,000 suits and dress shoes. It's interesting in that regard, knowing where it will go eventually. The match itself, bloody. It's what a bull rope match was all about. Using that big cowbell on people is just, but it was a fun match. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I thought going into it, I was going to be like, really, what am I watching? But it was a pretty good match. And, the JJ Dillon part of the match after Bass beats Bart, it was pretty balanced in that 5-minute window who was getting beat up. And I thought it told a good story when Black Bart comes in and makes sure that he finishes off Bass so that Dillon can get the win.
Yeah, you get a ref bump there. You get a really crappy pile driver by Black Bart on Ron Bass.
Yeah.
That was a little rough, but So Ron Bass beats Black Bart. JJ Dillon beats Ron Bass, and then we can move on. Any final thoughts on that one?
No, that's it.
No, cool. All right. So I really enjoyed this next match, at least the beginning part of it. I thought I laughed my ass off during this match. It's a arm wrestling match between the Barbarian and Superstar Billy Graham, and it's for a $10,000 purse to who can win an arm wrestling match. And I gotta say, and then eventually after that, once the arm wrestling match ends, they go into a regular match. But I enjoyed the arm wrestling part. This is something you don't get to see all the time, and you don't get to see it anymore. And I know if they did it now, people would just shit on it. But as psychotic as we know Superstar Billy Graham is right now, he sold his ass off during that arm wrestling match. And, it's probably easy against the Barbarian, but I got into it. I was like, this is what wrestling is all about, is just that, the performance of it and taking something that's utterly ridiculous and making it believable. And I felt that the arm wrestling portion did that to a T. What do you think?
I agree fully. I thought it was good storytelling. The first thing I'm thinking when I see Superstar coming down to the ring is I knew Hulk Hogan ripped off a lot from Superstar Billy Graham. I didn't realize how much of Hogan's later character stole off of him. Like, even the Hollywood and the eventual Hogan wearing long tights were identical to what Superstar wore. It was unbelievable.
That was great. And the arm wrestling match kind of ends in a DQ. Superstar's about to win the match, and then the aforementioned Paul Jones comes in and just clocks him with a cane. And so Superstar won by DQ and the $10,000. So then the wrestling match starts right away. And it's another, there's more blood in this one. It's our third straight bloody match, and Superstar would win by disqualification again after another cane shot from Paul Jones while he had Barbarian in a bear hug. So, just as you thought he was going to win, there's that great heel manager disrupting that and not letting his client lose. But overall, this whole segment from the match to the arm wrestling part, I really enjoyed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, superstar Billy Graham probably at that time is what, in his early 40s?
Yeah, probably didn't look it.
Well, that's what I
Yeah,
was going to say. The
yeah.
dude is jacked
He
out of
was
his mind.
42 there, so really,
So, I mean, that dude was on some good roids.
those
Like
good
the
'80s
best.
roids.
Oh, man. He might have gotten those from West Berlin. Or East Berlin for that matter. But he was jacked out of his mind. I thought the role that Paul Jones played is great. That's who he was as a manager. He wouldn't let his guys lose clean, and that's great. I thought the Barbarian looked great too.
Yeah,
Uh, there is he and Haku/Ming are the two most believable bad dudes. Like, period. Like, you wonder if they're gonna rip someone's arm off and then just eat it. That's the kind of guys they are. Like, he was legit the Barbarian.
yeah, he was great. He was great. So, you tend to not like, at least for me, it's like, man, like he just thinking of the longevity of his career, the Barbarian. Like, he was around during every era. He was just seemed to be in like the mid '80s. He's there and on a huge show. From his time in WCW and WWF, like, this guy has just been around forever.
The dude's still going and
Yeah,
putting on shows. Him and the Warlord still go to indie promotions.
like,
And it's
unbelievable.
believable.
Yeah,
I mean, like, he's a dude. Without a doubt, he's a dude.
yeah.
All right, so since you always like to hit me with trivia,
Sure.
it's your turn today, pal.
Okay.
So, which major professional wrestler was a national arm wrestling champion?
Oh man, I know this, and you're gonna. Is he like current right now?
No, he is not
Like-
current right now.
Okay.
I will give you one hint.
Okay.
Minnesota.
Oh, great. Rick Rude.
Yes.
Okay.
It was a good hint right there.
That was a very good hint. Really?
Yeah.
The ravishing one?
Yes.
Oh man, that's a good trivia question. I like
I
that
thought
one.
so. Every once in a while, I come up with one.
I
figured you put me on the spot last week. I had to get you.
Please.
You don't
please
give me hints.
No. I need hints. I need them. You don't. Please. All right. So our next match is for the NWA National Heavyweight Championship. And that is Terry Taylor, the Red Rooster, Terry Taylor, and Dollar Store Ric Flair, Nature Boy Buddy Landell. It was nice to see a straight-up wrestling match after an hour of blood and gimmicks, right or wrong.
Not with those two guys.
No, man, I didn't think this match was that bad. I thought...
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that bad. But you hit the nail on the head. Dollar Store, Ric Flair, and
Well, that was
the
his...
Cock-a-doodle-doo man.
Well, that was his gimmick, man, and he played it well.
Yeah.
Like, that's, just to be a Ric Flair ripoff, like, easily, but then proclaiming yourself to be the real Nature Boy. And he's got a backstage interview later in the night that isn't that bad. He could talk, man, and
Oh, he definitely could.
and the match itself isn't terrible, but I felt like this match, even though it wasn't, break the doors down, edge of your seat, exciting, it was a good wrestling match, and I felt like this was the turning point of the show. This is where the show turned around for me in midst of just being a horror movie into a legitimate card, because after this match, this show gets awesome. And
Yeah, definitely it does. I do go back to the fact that everything's about a title. Like the national heavyweight title. Like, what's the difference between the national heavyweight title and the U.S. title?
I was going to ask you that.
I mean, they're two different titles, but like that's like saying the intercontinental and world. They're both talking about the same thing, but we just try to ignore it.
Yeah, I didn't get that. There's a lot of belts in the show that are And I get it. When in the territory days, they had to go to a lot of different places. The NWA was huge, so
Well, that's what it was. It meant that there was a guy in every territory defending a belt.
Yeah, exactly.
And then would come together for the big shows like this.
Yeah, and I get that, because you have like the national heavyweight title, you have the world heavyweight title, you have the U.S. title, you have the national tag team titles and the world tag team titles, and it's just, yeah, there's a lot of belts going on, but I get it.
There was one not defended too, the Southern States heavyweight title.
Okay, did not know that.
Yeah, it was a thing.
But anyway, this match, was a good back and forth match. JJ Dillon is back managing Buddy Landel, and he's in his full tuxedo gear right now, which is the worst 80s tuxedo ever. He looked like Mark Twain. But I mean, you get a double ref bump in this, which leads to the finish. Terry Taylor sets up Landel for his superplex. JJ pushes Taylor off, so Landel just lands on him for the pin, and Buddy Landel is your new national heavyweight champion. Good. Like I said, good back and forth match. Kind of the turning point of the show, and it was a nice. I think that what made this match better was all the hot nonsense before it. It just kind of like you just kind of sat there. It's like, okay, just a regular wrestling match. This is good. I can watch this and not cringe too much. So, what were your thoughts on this?
I thought it was good Southern wrestling. A lot of chain wrestling, a lot of just. There was no flippy things and moves for the sake of moves. There was some ring psychology tied in. Mm-hmm. Obviously you have a manager involved. There were a lot of dusty finishes on this card, and this is kind of the really the second one that you see big time in terms of, third, because you have the superstar Barb, and then you have Bass or JJ Dillon and Bass.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you get a lot of those quasi finishes that Dusty will become known for as he moves forward in his booking career. But I did think it was a good match. I do think it kind of brought the fans back to that wrestling mentality versus that blood and guts. And then it'll set up for the rest of the evening. Yeah,
for sure. And so, after that, we have our seventh match of the night, which is I really enjoy this one too. This was for me. This was a great psychological match, which I love that kind of stuff. It's almost textbook psychological tag team wrestling. It's for the NWA National Tag Team Championship. You got the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. That's Arn and Ole Anderson, and they're going against the team of Wahoo McDaniel and Billy Jack Haynes. And what can you say about Arn Anderson other than he's 27 years old here? He's perpetually 45. He still looks like that. I know that's like the running joke, but it's like he was born that way. What is going on?
Dude could go, though, couldn't he?
He was great. I mean, I love this match.
I'll tell you what. The Andersons were awesome because what they did was believable in the ring. They isolated a body part, and they took it apart. And that immediately told you that they had a plan. They neutralized their opponent's best weapon. And to me, that was a piece of wrestling that I really, even as a young kid, I could kind of see what that mentality was. And the good guys were getting hurt by these really bad dudes.
Yeah, I think what made sense to me about this match was how they went about attacking their opponent. It was like it was strategic. It wasn't just let's go out and do some moves and do our thing. No. We're gonna beat up on the older guy in Wahoo McDaniel and just pummel him, and leave his jacked up younger partner in the corner to not do anything. And I thought it was great. And if you've never seen Billy Jack Haynes, he looked like he was a human action figure. And if I had to compare him to a contemporary, just body type, he was like Batista big, right?
Yeah, he was
huge.
If he wasn't a nutcase, he probably could have had I mean, you still listen to him talk. There's a couple of eggs short of a dozen there, but he was talented, man.
Yeah, so
And not too long after this, he'll be in WrestleMania 3. So a year later, he'll be in WrestleMania.
yeah, so like and it's so great how the Andersons cut off the ring. They just pummel Wahoo, and when he finally gets over there and tags Haynes in, you thinking you're gonna get a hot tag? No, you don't. Both Andersons are on top of him before he even gets like a foot in the ring. It is just everything about that match made so much sense to me, and I just love that. I love ring psychology and I love logic when it comes to this. And I know Bruce Pritchard says this a lot. It's just like it's dangerous to apply logic to illogical situations, and I get that. But this had so much of that, and it was just you get like a cheap win out of like by the heels with heel tactics, and it was great because Wahoo's like starting to get an advantage in the corner, but he makes the mistake of being in the opponent's corner. Ole trips him, holds onto his foot so Arn can get a pin. Everything about that match was absolutely made all the sense of the world. I didn't sit there and watch and be like, what was that? Why did they do that? No, everything made sense, told a great story. Love the match. What about you?
I loved everything that the Andersons ever did. As Ole got older, I didn't like his character, but again, they were believable heels. I'm really so this made me think about how good the revival / revolt are going to be when they go to the NWA and to AEW over the next few months, because that's their gimmick, is to be like that old school Anderson style. Take a body part apart, ring psychology, wrestling is wrestling. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, we'll see. All right. Any final thoughts on that one, or is that it for you?
No, that's really good for me. Like if you're gonna watch only a couple of the matches in this one, that is gotta be one of them.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And the next one, which I know you were excited to talk about. It's a tremendous match, and you see it's Magnum T.A. against Tully Blanchard in an I Quit cage match for the NWA US title. And you see, get a young Earl Hebner in the ring as the referee for this one, so I thought that was fun. And the crowd is just, there's literally a buzz in the crowd before this match even gets started. And I know I said this during our Best Without the Belt episode when you were talking about Magnum TA that I didn't really know a lot about him. But just watching this, and just before the match even gets going, how popular he was. He was such, like, everybody, the crowd just loved him. I mean, how could you not? But there's just this steady buzz throughout the match, and it worked. So, talk to me about this one. I'll let you get your thoughts out of the way first, because I knew you were excited to talk about this, and I don't want to torture you any further.
So Magnum TA, he had the Tom Selleck looks. He could go in the ring. The women wanted to be with him. The dudes wanted to be him. Riding his motorcycle around. He was a dude. And then you have on the other side, you have Tully Blanchard, who is the dressed to the nines with the robes, that arrogant, cocky heel, just doesn't like anyone. He knows that he's better than everyone. So really, coming in, that story is natural. The good guy versus the bad guy. And the idea of an I Quit match. Tully, while he can be weaselly, he has so much of an ego that you go, I don't know if he could actually say I quit. And Magnum can't, because he's Magnum TA. So going in, you couldn't figure out the finish a la, the match earlier in the day with Manny Fernandez and Abdullah. This one was, okay, who's going to win this? Who's going to actually say I quit?
Yeah,
And go ahead.
and you know what? And you felt that throughout the match as you're watching it unfold, and the deeper it goes, the the more you're thinking like you're gonna see one of these guys die in the ring because neither of them are gonna want to say, neither of them are gonna give up. They're gonna have. They hated each other so much, and you felt that animosity between the two of them. That in order to win, you're gonna have to kill the other guy, and it's like a movie. And I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this right now. For me, and I've been watching wrestling a long time, and I haven't seen everything, but I'm trying to roll through it. But out of the probably thousands of matches I've seen in my life, this was the most realistic match I have ever seen. You felt every punch, you felt every knee, you felt every crash into the ring. Every time they bopped each other with the microphone, you felt it. There's no leg slapping kicks here, and flippy nonsense. If you get tired of that stuff, watch this match because you really feel like these guys are legitimately beating the shit out of each other.
And they were.
Yeah.
That's how much they respected each other outside of the ring. Is they went shot for shot. I thought the use of the wooden chair was awesome. Because obviously a metal chair is not going to splinter. A wooden chair will.
Gives you extra. It turns one weapon into 8.
Yeah, and I mean, if you've ever gotten a splinter, you know how much that stinks. And now imagine it in your forehead.
Yeah,
somebody's driving it into you.
Yeah,
there's nothing fun about that idea.
One of my favorite spots in the match is Magnum's trying to get Tully to say I quit, and he's got the microphone in his face, and Tully just headbutts him in the gut. and Magnum just keels over. I thought that was just brilliant. Like, I'm not going to say I quit. I'm just going to use my head as a battering ram to get you off of me. But yeah, but you talk about the wooden chair. That's how the finish came. Baby Doll, who accompanied Tully to the ring, throws the wooden chair over the ring. It just disintegrates. So now there's extra weapons to come out, and it's like a movie where you see a guy trying to stab somebody in the head, and they're holding their hand away from it, and it's Tully straight up tries to murder Magnum, and then Magnum T.A gains the advantage, and with the same piece of chair, then he succeeds in stabbing Tully in the head, to which Tully says, I quit, and we have a new U.S. champ. So, like, unbelievable match. If there's one match to watch throughout this card, if you're going to pick one, it's this one. It's absolute classic. It works on every level. And if you like that, like ultra violent, but it's violence with a purpose, and I think that's what carries this to be like a kind of timeless affair. What do you say to that?
I mean, it's one of my top 3 favorite matches of all time.
Really, that high? That's a lot.
Oh yeah, but this is a match that I remember from when I was 5 years old. I remember watching this when I rented the VHS with my grandmother because my mom never would have rented it for me. And I would watch it and see this, and it was, at the time I didn't see it the way I see it now, but you have a guy who is an alpha male who had no problem selling for people. Just think about that for a minute. Magnum T.A is as big of an alpha male as Lesnar, Goldberg, all those guys in their prime. And how many of those guys really let other people get heat on them? Yeah. And there was never a doubt during this match that he was going to do what he needed to do to give the people everything they wanted. And you can't enjoy it unless you have a little bit of, oh no, he might lose this match. Like, no, Magnum, no. And straight up, Tully Blanchard's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time.
That's a given.
Magnum T.A, I think if he had a longer career, you definitely would have been up there. Now, just think about this. Tessa Blanchard was raised by Magnum T.A and is the daughter of Tully Blanchard. Could there have been two better wrestlers to kind of guide her in her career?
It's an excellent point.
Like, just think about that.
Yeah,
that's awesome to me.
Yeah, I love the after the next match we're going to talk about. There's you get the Magnum's promo, being interviewed backstage by Johnny Weaver, and he had a great line in that, and it was so honest. And he goes, "That ain't wrestling, but that's what it took to get back what's mine." And I'm like, damn, man, that's good stuff. That's really good stuff. Ooh.
He didn't need 20 minutes in a ring to get it across.
No.
He took his 30 seconds and put over the best promo he probably ever did.
Yeah. Quick and simple. That's I think, we're really what we get at here, and like going back and watching a lot of this old stuff. It's there's some gaga, but I think if I can get on a soapbox for a minute, is I think one of the things that lacks in today's product, and this goes across every promotion that's out there, is it's the lack of simplicity that hurts a lot of these matches and a lot of these promos and things like that. It's just they always constantly have to go bigger and better and more things, and I don't always think that that's what we need all the time. I think sometimes the simplest, straightforward is the best. Just my.
I'll tell you what. Especially right now with empty arenas, keeping the promos to a minimum.
Yeah.
You come out, you say your piece, you get out. Because there is no crowd stopping you. There's no playing to the crowd. And to me, that's the hardest part watching. Where normally I do enjoy promos, right now I don't.
See, that's the thing. And not to get off on too much of a tangent, but like, what's the point of doing in-ring promos right now? What is the point? They should be doing all backstage stuff like they did in the old days. Like an episode of Superstars where it's just like, hey, if you like, the only wrestling's in the ring. And backstage you have somebody with a microphone, and I'm not saying like I'm not watching religiously as much as I'd like to, but I try and keep up to speed on as much as I can. But like those one-on-one, literally all you're talking to is people at home. So why aren't you talking to the people at home? I think is the point I'm trying to get at. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like those promos work so well. That's for a dumb kid on a Saturday morning, but I think like going back to that, what are you doing in the ring? Like, stop. Who are you talking to? So, whatever. Doesn't matter. Moving forward. So we have a tag match. This is a Atlanta street fight. And it's between the Midnight Express, which is Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, and accompanied by, of course, Jim Cornette, against the team of Jimmy Valiant and Miss Atlanta Lively, which is Ronnie Garvin and Drag.
Yeah.
If there is a popcorn match on this show before you get to some good stuff, this is it. This match is a hot mess. And it's, the Midnight Express come out in tuxedos. You got Ronnie Garvin and Drag, like I said, blood everywhere. There's not even and the occasional wink to the camera isn't that bad, but even the announcers are selling that it's actually a woman, that Miss Atlanta Lively really is a woman, and I thought that was just, weird. But I don't know, this match stunk to me. What about you?
I couldn't make it all the way through.
Yeah, it was really bad.
So, all right. So let's, instead of accentuating the negative, let's turn and talk positive.
Okay.
Who is the better Midnight Express? Condrey and Eaton or Stan Lane and Eaton?
You know what's funny? And I hate to do this because this is corny as shit, but I literally had the same question on my notes for you. Same exact question. But for me, it's Stan Layton Eden. I always like that form of the Midnight Express better.
Is that because you were more familiar with him, you think?
Well, why else?
Oh, no, I'm just
But
asking.
I'm talking about,
there was another reason.
No, there's none. Like A, it's more familiar, and B, I just felt like they had better matches. Like I don't know. I just like Stan Lane. With Eden, I think they were a better team together.
I enjoyed them better in traditional matches. However, Loverboy and Bobby Eaton, when they had the scaffold match with the Road Warriors, and the promo that the Road Warriors did before the match, where they literally wrote down on the top of pumpkins standing on top of scaffolds that they wrote Loverboy and dropped the pumpkin to simulate what they're going to do to the Midnight Express, was awesome. So in that regard, I did enjoy Condrey because...
But you just described something the Road Warriors did.
Yes, but they were the first ones to put the Road Warriors out.
Okay.
I don't know if you realize that.
I don't.
The Road Warriors were the absolute beasts. No one put them on the shelf. But here it is, the Midnight Express of all people, the absolute chicken shit heels, put the Road Warriors out. And then the Road Warriors were like, nah, we're going to get our comeuppance. That's the same time that Cornette blows out both his knees falling off the scaffold because Big Bubba Rogers had his glasses on. If I ever used my power for good, Greg,
don't.
I could probably save the world.
Well, you can try. You got some spare time.
Yeah.
We can just try and save the podcast world from now and, ruin the
I think
fans.
We're doing a good job of that.
Yeah, we are. We're building the brand. We're building it up. I love that we just get to talk about stuff that makes us happy instead of having those crappy podcasts that just complain about everything, that hate watch stuff. I want to watch stuff and have fun. And that's what this stuff, like watching Starrcade 85, it was fun to watch and to take notes and kind of do some research and things like that. Damn, that's what makes this fun for me. It's not just watching stuff and be like, oh, that sucked, this guy should win. This stuff happened 35 years ago coming up, which is baffling to me. We don't have to worry about fantasy booking. We don't have to worry about, oh, where's this going? No, we just get to look back on it with joy and talk about what we liked and don't like, and it's fine because this match was terrible, and we can move on to a real tag match. Again, and the next tag match was the main event for the Greensboro show. Shockingly enough, you think like having to follow Tully and Magnum in a I Quit Cage match, but they succeeded. And there's a whole lot of talent in this match, and that's the Rock and Roll Express versus Ivan and Nikita Koloff. This is another cage match. They just left the cage up, and it's for the NWA World Tag Team Championship. So why don't you give your thoughts on this one first, and I'll give you mine.
So here is why they're able to main event over at Magnum and Tully. At this time, there might not be anyone more over than the Rock and Roll Express. They were, wow, the people went crazy because of how good Ricky Morton was at selling. He would sell so well that the girls in the front row would be crying their eyes out. And you'd get the shots of the crowd and they're going, no, Ricky, no, save him, Robert. And it was just, that's what they did. The Koloffs, Ivan Koloff is the guy that beat Bruno for the belt. The dude could go. One of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. And then, if there's somebody that believes their gimmick more than Nikita Koloff, the dude literally born Scott Simpson in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, changes his name to Nikita Koloff and only speaks Russian for 5 years. Just the match itself is great. Another one where you see the storytelling. The good guys are getting beat up by the bad guys, and then they're going to be able to overcome it at the end, only to then get the crap kicked out of him afterwards because you left him laying and it left the fans wanting more. Now all of a sudden you get more out of this feud.
Yeah, and just going back to that, I wasn't questioning why the Rock and Roll Express were in the main event. I was just saying that it had to be a tough spot, and if anybody can do it to follow the I Quit Cage match, they were able to do it. And it's just, it is a great match, and I thought what added to it was the complement of styles, because you have these big and strong giant Russians, and then the quick, athletic attack of the Rock and Roll Express. It complemented. Sometimes styles clash, other times different styles work very well together, and I thought that was the case in this match. But the finish came when Gibson was getting beat on. He made a quick tag, and as he was getting back up, he was getting back body dropped, and then Ivan had his back to Ricky Morton, who just rolled him up, pushed him off the cage, and rolled him up for the pin. It was a very cool finish, I thought. I really liked the finish a lot. What about you?
Yeah, it was very good.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was different than what you're used to seeing in a steel cage match.
Yeah, for sure. And I really enjoyed it. And then you get the beat down after, where Crusher Khrushchev comes back, and they beat up Robert Gibson with the chain. And it's a good ending and way to send off the crew from Greensboro and to take us to our main event. So any final thoughts on this one?
So the one thing I'm going to say, two of my favorite tag teams growing up were the Rock and Roll Express and the British Bulldogs. If you go on the network under Hidden Gems, somewhere in there is the Rock and Roll Express versus the British Bulldogs. It is awesome. That is all.
Definitely check that out. I think you turned me on to that a while ago, and I watched that. It is very good. All right, so it's main event time. We got Dusty Rhodes, the challenger, versus the World Heavyweight Champion, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and this is coming from the Omni, and the story goes down like this. So this is Flair's third reign as champ, and he had held the belt for over a year. On the September 29th show at the Omni, Flair had defeated Nikita Koloff in a cage match, and the Nikita and Ivan then attacked Flair until Rhodes came down and fought them off, and then Ole and Arn Anderson came in, and along with Flair, they beat down Dusty, and they broke his ankle Flair broke his ankle with the diving knee drop, and then applied the figure four, and we're off to the races heading into Starrcade 85. So, and this is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is pre-official Horsemen, right? They were kind of together, but they weren't named yet.
So this is pre-Horsemen.
Okay.
Remember when Flair came in as a cousin of the Andersons?
That's it. Yeah, that's right.
So that's where there's the relationship with those three. Yeah, they were bad guys of bad guys.
Oh, seemed it. So I loved Flair's entrance in here, because it's like you get nothing, and then the spotlight shines, and he's just standing there, and then the lights come on and start flashing, and then you hear his music playing. I thought that was so cool. Very different than what you're used to seeing. It wasn't the anticipation of the music starts and then you're waiting for him to walk out. No, he's just standing there like a boss. And then it's also the psychology of the match. Dusty's working the ankle. He's trying to, give Flair that receipt for his own injury. And I love that. And it's just the one thing that took me out of the match a little bit was, did you catch there's one dude that's just wooing and yelling for Dusty the entire time? Oh, it's annoying. It's really annoying. It took me kind of out of it. Just this one loud fan that happened to have a seat next to a microphone. But I don't know. It's a classic match. It's very slow and methodical. If you're looking for a fast pace, this is not your scene. But I'm not. I love. This is the stereotypical main event. It draws you in. It starts off slow, heats up towards the end. You get kind of a schmoz finish, and but great storytelling for a great rivalry. What were your thoughts?
So I don't necessarily think this is my favorite Dusty Flair match, but it is the traditional Dusty Flair match. I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about it being the traditional old school main event. Like, Flair matches were not quick. The dude prided himself on being able to go an hour with everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that shows here just how good they are. And Dusty's another guy that he gets his due for sure, but he had so much charisma. So much. And then Flair also. I mean, they are the two antithesis of each other. Like, they couldn't be more different.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. You know we had like there's the popular debate topic now is like this Mount Rushmore bullshit, which I can't stand because it makes no sense. It's impossible to put four people on a monument with as much product as we have over the years. But if I can get hyperbolic for a second, is Dusty Rhodes, you can argue who's the best of all time, whatever. Is Dusty Rhodes the most beloved superstar of all time?
Very well might be. I couldn't argue against it. Off the top of my head, I can't think of someone.
Like, there is just like this unconditional love amongst the fans for that guy. Because you know, like there were guys that were more popular. There were guys like, or at least like sold more merch and more tickets. They were guys that during their primes were, you know, bigger stars. You know, nationally, internationally, whatever. If you talk about your Hogans and your Austins and your Rocks, that's fine. But you know, you hear there's just such a love for Dusty Rhodes amongst the wrestlers, amongst the fans, and it's just he is just such a beloved figure, and you see that in this match too with the crowd, because they wanted to see him get back at Flair. They knew, and especially in the building that they heard him in, because guaranteed there were a lot of the same fans that were in the building at Starrcade that were in the building the night they broke his ankle, right? So it's just, you can tell that it's just this, they just want him to get what's his. And, you know, the ending of the match is kind of like this crazy finish. You know, you get a ref bump. You get, you know, here come Arn and Ole Anderson. I said Arnie, didn't I? Arn and Ole Anderson. You know, and Rhodes takes out Arn, but then catches a knee from Ole. And then a new ref comes out. Flair goes to try and pick up Dusty, but Dusty gets the inside cradle in the 3, and we have a new world champ. But it wouldn't last. You know, the victory, and it didn't happen on this show either. They showed the end of the show with the celebration in the locker room. But you know, it was later that the decision was reversed by Tommy Young, because he was taken out of the match, and he felt that Flair should have been disqualified because of the interference, and he remained world champion. And Rhodes, and then you get the formation of the Horsemen, and then, you know, Rhodes would eventually win the title again get it back at Great American Bash in '86, and you know. But Flair would get it back, of course, because he always did. You got to rack up those 16 world championships. But, you know, like I said, it's just a methodical match. And it's that textbook storytelling where you don't need these over-the-top spots, these big moves, these ooh and ahs and gagas. No, it's just two guys that hated each other fighting over the greatest prize in their sport. And sometimes that's all you need. And like I said earlier, keep it simple. It's just, it makes sense. Everything about this match makes sense. Let's go. You break my ankle, I'm going to try and break your ankle. Oh, I hurt your ankle, so I'm going to go after it and try and cripple you some more. It all just makes sense. So, you know, overall, you know, any final thoughts on the main event? Then we'll just kind of put a bow on this one.
So, yes, there is something I want to bring up.
Okay.
We don't see enough of this in the big major shows anymore. Everybody looks at like a WrestleMania as the culmination. Starrcade is the biggest show of the year in the NWA at this time. Yet they use this to build a storyline further, extend what was a 1 year storyline now into a 2 year storyline, developing the greatest faction of all time on top of it. And you don't see that anymore. You see that it has to culminate here. But this also tells you where good storytelling can allow for an extended feud. You give a little bit of patience, you let things ferment. Like, if you make beer, you're not drinking it the night that you make it. You're letting it sit and ferment. Otherwise, it's going to be terrible. And that's kind of what I see a lot now is everybody's rushing to what the finish is. Whereas here it was like, nah, this isn't the finish. You knew the way the match ended, it wasn't going to be the finish.
Yeah, but they didn't do it at the expense of the payoff. That's the secret. Yeah. That's the secret. You still get Dusty wins. He gets a celebration. He's got the champagne in the locker room. All of his buddies there celebrating. Yeah, it's a great night. But then you know what? There's the next morning. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and they after you party it up and they took your title away and you got to get it back. So it's so smart, and that's the age of like, but if it's not that, it's the age of the weekly television. Nowadays it's always about the next show. They don't and that's a part of the problem I have with some of today's products is I feel like. And this doesn't even go through like the quarantine portion of it. It doesn't matter, or like empty arenas and everything. It's been like this for years, where they give away too much stuff on TV. Where by the time you get to a pay-per-view event or whatever, it doesn't matter how many pay-per-views you have a year. You can have 12. My problem isn't that there's too many pay-per-views. My problem is like when you're building up to a pay-per-view match, you've already seen these two guys go at it like 3 times. So where's the what I'm trying to say is where's the stakes in the pay-per-view if you're already like, oh, these guys already fought like 3 times. Why do I care about, why is this match any bigger than what I'm watching on Monday nights, right?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree fully.
So I think there's not enough of keeping people apart because it takes away from what where you're really wanting to go. But that's where the crappy storytelling gets to. There's no builds anymore. It's chapters. It's not books. But
I'll go a step further. You have these people writing for the WWE the day of the show. Like you got to have the idea for where it's leading to before you start writing. Otherwise, you're just flying by the seat of your pants. And look, do sometimes they hit home runs? Absolutely. But you're putting yourself in a bad pitch count trying to write the day of and rewrite 3 times because Vince doesn't like it. Take a page out of the old school book and have a long-standing story. They have enough guys on that roster that dudes don't have to put their hands on each other. They can have run-ins. They can have, just promos. Like, think about the old school superstars where you'd have the little box. The Hart Foundation would be wrestling on TV and Demolition would come up in the corner talking trash about the Hart Foundation.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of stuff prolongs feuds. They never touch during the week because you knew that was the pay-per-view event. They would touch each other on house shows to sell tickets, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Work out the kinks on house shows. Make things special again.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I can't say much more about that. So, before we get out of here, any other final thoughts on Starrcade 85? It's definitely worth a watch on the network. There's something for everybody on this match. If you like old school battles, slow methodical matches, if you like the ultra violent bloodbaths, it's there. It's a fun show, and I definitely recommend if there's one match to watch, it's that the Tully and Magnum T.A match, the I Quit Steel Cage match. What about you, man? Any final thoughts?
I just thought it was a great show, and I was really glad that we went with this because I thought it really was, to get back in the flow of talking about a show, it's a good one to kick it off.
No, definitely. I'm with you there. All right, so what's on tap next? What we're going to do another little feature. It's kind of a list without a list, but we decided that there was no Hall of Fame ceremony this year, and we were really talking about doing an ECW show, but, you know, as we were talking, we realized, like, the ECW pay-per-views as a whole, aren't very good. There's good matches, but there's not great shows. But we wanted to do something ECW. And with the lack of Hall of Fame ceremony this year, with everything going on, we decided that we're going to open up our own ECW Hall of Fame. And that'll be our next show. We're gonna pick a few guys, and we're each gonna have our classes and induct some of our favorite superstars that graced us in Extreme Championship Wrestling into the first ever ECW Hall of Fame. So I'm excited to get that done. What about you?
I think it's going to be great. I mean, that was one of the biggest stepping stones in our wrestling fandom, was Friday nights watching 1 a.m. ECW shows on the MSG network.
Oh, yeah, it was the best. So that's something to look forward to coming down the pike. We're going to do that soon. And but as always, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Just type in DDT Archives and subscribe and rate us there. You can follow me on Twitter at DDT Archives. And all of our shows and all of our links are going to be on our website, highspotslowblows.com. And your Twitter handle is?
Chris _ DDT HSLB.
Fantastic.
Look at that. I learned it.
Yay. I'm so proud of you. But once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for checking us out. Hit us up on Twitter if you have any show ideas, things you want us to cover, pay-per-views, Monday Night Raws, Nitros. We're going to do those coming soon, so I hope so. That's a good idea, right? We do individual TV shows? Of course, why not? All right, and then we'll see you next time for the ECW Hall of Fame here on the DDT Archives.